Right, hello English literature students. This is the PowerPoint on the Christina Rossetti poem An Apple Gathering. So you can use this to revise from when you need to remember each poem. So we'll start with the title, An Apple Gathering, and what's significant about that title once you've looked at the poem. That every female character in the poem gathers apples, except for our speaker. That the apple gathering seems to be a communal event. So you get this sense that everybody in the community has gone to collect their apples at the same time, and it's a sign of how she is now outside that community because she has no apples to collect. She has no apples because she picked the blossom. I think we can call this a symbol of premarital sex. Okay. This has been used throughout the history of poetry, this idea of gather ye rosebuds while ye may, the idea that taking the flower, taking it in its bud, is an image of enjoying love, romance, but that often codes as sexual behaviour. She took her pleasure too soon. So literally, she picked the blossoms. That was fun. They were beautiful. She enjoyed wearing them. But she then ruined the future because the blossoms would have given her apples. And metaphorically, she took her pleasure too soon. She had sex with the boy she was going out with, / in love with, and that now means she won't get her reward. She won't get the thing that you wait for, marriage, respectability. She has nothing to offer a husband if she isn't a virgin in Victorian England. So some of the diction that also helps us be fairly confident about this meaning in the poem, that this term, this verb plucked, is often used and has connotations of women losing their virginity. The idea of doing things in due season, now literally the seasons, spring, summer, autumn, but it more generally means the proper and the appropriate time, doing things in their season. There are contrasts. She describes herself as empty-handed, whereas the other girls in the poem have heaped up baskets. Both the other girls' voices and the Willie's voice are described as sweet, and this word has connotations of innocence, youth, and love. Love, in stanza 5, we learn is what she offered to her beloved, who we infer is this young fellow called Willie. Or it's possible that she gave in to him for love. Okay, so just have a look at that line and see how it can go both ways. The chill that comes in at the end of the poem changes the mood of the poem and sounds ominous. And at the end of the poem, she loiters, and loitering doesn't sound innocent. It sounds like you are loitering, you're up to something probably no good. So diction is one of the main things that help create the tone of the poem. We have a first person voice, so we're talking about the tone of this voice. It sounds complaining and it sounds bitter. So we're seeing it through her consciousness, it's her feelings about what's going on, and some of these verbs she uses to describe how other people treat her, the words jeer, mock, and tease. The tone could be described as disconsolate, that means without any hope or support, and abandoned. She asks some rhetorical questions of the young man, Willie. She doesn't confront him like Maud Clare does. She asks these questions rhetorically. Was my love less worth than apples with their green leaves piled above? Yeah, clearly she doesn't think it should have been, but it has become so. And there's an exclamation in the penultimate stanza which gives her emotions this force. To think that by this way we used to walk, we shall not walk again. Oh, so it's got this sad, you can see this bitter but also melancholy and sad by the end. Some of the grammar features that you might want to focus on and comment on. Each stanza links to form. Each stanza is one sentence, so it adds to a nice, clear, simple narrative structure. This is a narrative poem. It's all in the past tense, but we do move between two time periods, this evening and then the events in the past that led up to this evening. So what we learn about the past is the evening when she plucked and wore her blossom, and we can infer that was the spring, that this is now autumn. And she also remembers that she and Willie used to walk on this lane. And in the Victorian times, there was that idea of a lover's lane. Okay, you might even see sometimes lanes called lovers' lanes, and that was where a couple could go for some privacy and to be alone. But the implication is, you know, young couples together alone may get up to no good. So some of the imagery, this is when I'm talking about descriptive imagery. Okay, this is not figurative imagery. So this isn't metaphors and similes. This is just what's described for us. So we get this main setting, and it's this lane between the orchard and the village. We can sort of work out that geography. The main time of the poem is the evening, and we get these little markers to give us that setting. The description of the sunset sky, the shadows cool, and then the night grows chill. So we do get time passing. These are all things that make it narrative, setting and time. The other girls are described as having sweet voices and being plump, and they are near their homes. And plump is a very positive thing in Victorian England for description of a girl. Willie is strong and tall. They're very simple characters. It's a very short poem, but also it's almost, they're just types. Baskets are heaped up and full, the apples are rosy, their leaves are green. Okay, so it's nice, simple, straightforward imagery that you can picture. The figurative imagery, this is when we're talking about comparative images. So she describes herself as empty-handed, and that becomes symbolic. Because her tree produced no apples, she's going to have trouble establishing her own home. She's not going to get a husband. She's got nothing to offer a prospective husband. So these apples are standing really for the virginity. The apples stand for a commodity that women exchange with men for the security of marriage. Yeah, literally, have my apple. Yes, and if you think about Eve and biting the apple and how that brought knowledge, in particularly knowledge of sexual things, because it's only after Adam and Eve have bitten the apple they put clothes on. It's only after they've eaten the apple they know they're naked. So one of the key things that the knowledge of biting the apple brings is sexual knowledge and sexual shame and sexual guilt. The two girls are named Lillian and Lilias, both versions of Lily, and we know what the Lily stands for, purity and virginity. It's white. Remember, if you can, to talk about sound in poetry. Okay, it's a real distinguishing ability in the exam. So there's repetition of plosives in the opening line. That's P's and B's, so plucked. And it can actually reflect the action of picking. Off it comes. The music of the verse is articulated in many long vowels. When it's written like that, it means I stole it from someone else. But if you think about that, look out for some nice long vowels that do that. It creates a regretful, burdened quality, which reflects the chill of the oncoming night. And there's a falling cadence at the end of the first stanza, which conveys a sad finality. So lots of words to describe sounds are words from music. Yeah, and cadence is a sort of quality of sound. Wore them all that evening in my hair. Those are long, lingering, rhapsodic vowels to represent that evening when she had this sensual languor. Wore them all that evening in my hair. So the wore and the all are those long vowels. In terms of form and structure, we have 7 quatrains, and they have alternate rhymes. So that's a very simple form that we expect from a ballad. Frequency of rhymes that do not finish on a sounded consonant add to the mournful tone. So here and there, cheer and near, twos and dews, they end with vowel sounds, and that can create this more mournful tone. Ending on a consonant makes things sound a little sharper and a little more finished. The first 3 lines of the quatrains are 10 syllables, which is unusually long for Rossetti. So once again, gives it this mournful tone, gives it this melancholy feeling of evening and gloomy things. The shorter 6-syllable final line creates one of her characteristically bleak endings. So remember, when you're quoting something, if you're quoting the line, think about where it comes in the structure. Think about, is it one of these short lines, one of these long lines? And you can say more than one thing about what you quote. Yeah, so you can talk about the diction in it, but also try and say something about the sound or the form and structure.